So for those of you who haven't been here before, welcome, welcome. We are the Marine Environmental Education Center located out on Hollywood Beach. And today is World Sea Turtle Day, which we're really excited about. We are very turtle focused here. If any of you have been here to meet Captain, our green sea turtle, she is very excited for it to be World Sea Turtle Day. Today we are actually going to be talking with Kelly Martin, who is our program coordinator here at the MEEC. Kelly has about 20 years of turtle experience. She is the co-founder of Florida Leatherbacks, Inc. She is here as our turtle expert, helping Captain and all of our little guys as well. And she is going to explain a little bit about all the 7 species, but also really about those awesome, awesome leatherbacks. They are super specialized. They are her specialty. And they are super cool. So she is going to jump right in, take over. If you guys have any questions, please hold them till the end. We will be muting everyone for the presentation. We will have that chat open, so feel free to write them in there and Kelly will answer them all at the end. If you have any issues, also write it in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, so was Christina. And if you have any technical issues, we'll try to help you virtually. Otherwise, we will just be holding off till the end. So whenever you're ready, Kelly, you could just take it on over.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Taylor. I appreciate it. I'm so glad all of you are here. Like Taylor mentioned, it's World Sea Turtle Day, and I am super excited to be able to present a little bit of information to you guys today. I am going to leave my chat window closed just because it's a little distracting as I try to go through everything. But like she said, I will answer all of your questions when we get to the end of the presentation. So please feel free to leave whatever you have in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation with here. And give me 1 second. I'll get that set up for you. All right. So again, it is World Turtle Day, and if you guys have any technical issues or anything, like Taylor said, just mention them in the chat. She'll try and work through it with you. But today is Sea Turtle Day. June 16th was actually the birthday of Dr. Archie Carr, who is one of the pioneers of sea turtle research. He's been doing sea turtle research since the early 1900s. He's been involved in some absolutely fantastic research. So World Sea Turtle Day was kind of created in his honor. So just kind of a brief introduction to sea turtles. There are 7 total species worldwide. We do get 5 in the waters off the coast of Florida, and we get 3 of them that nest on our beaches regularly. 6 out of the 7 of those are considered endangered or threatened, which means their populations are in trouble, but they are all protected by federal, state, county, and municipal laws, at least here in the United States. Sea turtles are marine, air-breathing reptiles. They've remained relatively unchanged for over 150 million years now. Most of them reach maturity, which means they start nesting on our beaches between the ages of 15 and 30 years, and they can live for over 60 years. Here in South Florida, where we're working, our nesting season runs from March 1st to October 31st. Nesting surveys are one way that we can keep an eye on how the populations are doing. So by going out on the beaches each morning and counting the number of nests on our beaches, we're able to monitor those populations long term. And these surveys are done all around the state of Florida, as well as globally by groups of biologists, volunteers, researchers, state park employees. And it's just a really good way of monitoring how well our sea turtles are doing in the world. So as I mentioned, there are 7 species of turtle in the world. The 3 regular turtles that we get nesting on our beaches are green turtles, loggerheads, and leatherbacks. That's at the top of your screen there. We also get hawksbills and Kemp's ridleys that live in the waters off the coast of Florida. And not very often found here are flat-backed turtles. They're native to Australia. Ridleys, which really don't nest here. Now, each one of these species are very different. They all have very different diets. They live in different places and play a very unique role in our ecosystem. I'm not going to focus too much on each of the species today. We've had some wonderful presenters that have done a very good job talking about all of those species. We do have a YouTube channel, social media, so if you guys are interested in learning more about those individuals, make sure you check out the YouTube channel and watch some of those videos. So like I said, 6 of the 7 species of turtle in the world are threatened and endangered, but there are a lot of things that you and I and just the common public can do to help sea turtles in our daily lives without having to get involved in the actual research side of things. So here in South Florida, one of the main threats is coastal lighting. That's actually the biggest threat in South Florida. So sea turtles use light cues to navigate. So when they're on the beaches nesting or when the hatchlings emerge, they're using those natural light cues to tell them where to go. Typically, they're looking for the brightest, which is the moon and stars reflecting off the water. But if we have artificial lighting on our homes, our condos, or hotels, they get disoriented and they're going to end up going the wrong way. And this does affect both hatchlings and adults. But there are a lot of things that you can do every day to help out the sea turtles. If you do live near the beach or if you're visiting the beach, make sure you're turning off all of your exterior lighting or shielding it so it's not visible from the beach. Close your blinds and your drapes in your house or your condo or your hotel room at night. Use motion sensitive, only goes on when you're outside. And we always want to make sure that we're using amber LEDs. This is a wavelength of light that looks kind of orange or red, and sea turtles aren't as sensitive to that. You also want to make sure that if you're on the beach at night, you're not using any flashlights or your cell phone flashes for pictures. A lot of people don't realize that even if you live inland, if you're not living in a coastal community, that sky glow, that picture on the bottom left of your screen there, is a huge problem for sea turtles. And that's from communities that are far, far from the coast. So make sure that even if you do live inland, you're shielding your lights and making sure that excess light isn't lost to the atmosphere. It's actually estimated that approximately a third of all the lighting in the US is wasted to sky glow. So it's shooting straight up in the sky and not really helping us see what we want to see on the ground. And this costs us a total of approximately $2 billion a year in the United States. Another thing is beach furniture and holes. So I know we all love going out on the beach and digging holes or building sand castles. We just want to make sure that when we're done, we're filling in those holes, we're knocking down those sand castles, because our sea turtles are coming ashore at night to nest, and those can pose a big threat to them. So just make sure that after you're done digging that hole, you fill it in, or my favorite part is once you build a sand castle, knock it down. That's always a lot of fun. Another threat that we're all pretty familiar with is pollution. So obviously garbage does not belong in our oceans, and it can pose a big threat. Sea turtles can risk becoming entangled in plastics, and they also can risk ingesting plastics. Some of our sea turtles eat jellyfish, and oftentimes plastic bags can be confused for jellyfish. So we want to make sure that we're not leaving our plastics in the ocean. The biggest thing you can do, give me 1 second here, guys, is make sure that you're cutting down on your single-use plastics. It's one of the best things that we can do for the environment. Recycling is great, but the best thing that you can do is cut down on things like plastic grocery bags or plastic water bottles, straws, plastic cutlery, things like that. Instead, try and go for reusable alternatives. So reusable grocery bags, metal straws, things like that.
Hey guys, if you're drawing on the screen, we could all see it, and we will start kicking people out. So please do not draw on the screen. Thank you.
Another big threat to sea turtles is commercial fisheries. So sea turtles can become entangled in lines and nets that are used for these massive fishing operations. In fact, up to 20 pounds of unintended animals, which is called bycatch, are caught for every 1 pound of intended catch. So when we drag the giant nets along the bottom in search of shrimp or scallops or fish, we're basically catching everything in the way. So there is a big thing that people can do to avoid this. There's an app or a group called Seafood Watch. They give you this handy little guide, or there's an app that you can put on your phone that tells you what some smart seafood alternatives are, so that you can avoid these harmful practices and use safe alternatives. So download the Seafood Watch app or pick up the little guide and carry it with you when you go out to eat seafood. So that's kind of general turtle information, but really today what I wanted to focus on was my favorite species of sea turtle, which is the leatherback. I manage a research project in Southeast Florida where we've been researching leatherback sea turtles for almost 20 years now. And so I wanted to go into a little bit of that for you to give you some more information. So they are the largest turtle on Earth. Go ahead and change my screen here. They are the only living member of their family, and they do have the widest distribution of any reptile in the world. They can be found in almost all of our oceans. They're also unique among the 7 species in that they're considered soft-shell turtles. They're not hard-shell turtles. Their shell is actually kind of a mesh of bones and fat. And the reason is because these are the deepest diving turtles out there, and their shell needs to be able to contract when they dive really deep because of the pressure in the water. They also have a shape that helps keep them very hydrodynamic. So they have these 7 ridges on their shell there, and a teardrop shape for hydrodynamics. They also, each one of them has this little pink spot on their head, almost like a thumbprint. It's unique to each individual. But what that is, it's actually called a window to the brain. It's the pineal gland, and that helps them detect changes in daylight length. So changes in the amount of daylight, and that helps them cue into migration and stuff like that. They're also unique in that they can tolerate colder temperatures than any of the other species of sea turtle. These guys are found near the coast of South America. They're found as north as Canada, and they're able to tolerate really cold temperatures by some really unique adaptations to their body. They have what's called countercurrent heat exchange, which helps cool the blood as it's moving out to their flippers and warm the blood as it's coming back to their heart, and that helps save energy. They have a really thick layer of fat that surrounds their muscles to help insulate them from cold. And they also have a network of blood vessels that allows them to cool themselves when they're in warmer temperatures and they start to overheat. They also have a really cool method of salt removal. So all species of sea turtle have this. It's a gland behind their eye. So these guys are obviously feeding in salt water, and they're taking in some of that salt water when they eat, and they need a way to process the salt out of their body. And they have a gland behind their eye that helps remove the salt from their body. So if you see in this picture, it looks like this turtle is crying. She's actually excreting a really salty solution that looks like tears, but that's how they remove salt from their body. They also have a really unique esophagus, which is basically what we're using to swallow our food. We have this. Theirs, however, is slightly terrifying. I hope it's not in your nightmares tonight, but they have these really cool spines in their mouth and in their esophagus. And there's a really good reason for that. Leatherbacks feed solely on jellyfish. So these are obviously really slimy creatures that they're feeding on. So they need to be able to have those spines in their esophagus to help keep that gelatinous food moving down. So all those spines point down to keep their food moving down and help them consume those slimy jellyfish that they love. So maximum dive depth for leatherbacks is actually really deep. It's 4,000 feet. There are very few animals, particularly mammals and reptiles, that can dive that deep. They spend a lot of time at the surface, actually. They typically surface to breathe air every 4 to 10 minutes and spend approximately 40% of their time at the surface of the water. So this is kind of an idea of where they're nesting in the Caribbean. Florida is not a very big nesting beach. The northern coast of South America, so Suriname, French Guyana, Guyana down there, that's actually one of their major nesting beaches. And recently we discovered one of the largest populations of nesting leatherbacks over in Africa in Gabon. So here in South Florida, our nesting season is March through, the leatherback nesting season is March through June. Other turtles are nesting a little bit later. Each one of their nests typically contains 60 to 80 eggs, so slightly fewer than some of the other turtles. And their sex is determined by temperature. So the warmer the temperature of the same females that are produced in the nest, and the cooler temperature is going to produce more males. And their nest typically takes about 60 to 70 days to hatch. And hopefully we find this. This is a nest full of leatherback hatchlings. They look just like their parents. But like I said, it's usually about 60 or 80 hatchlings that emerge at a time. It's usually at night, but sometimes this was right after sunrise. Sometimes we'll get them right after sunrise too. So they're slightly bigger than some of the other turtles. They're about the size of the palm of your hand. And I mentioned a lot of threats to these turtles and the fact that they are threatened and endangered, but if you look at the line on the bottom there, that's actually a graph of the number of nests in Florida. In the 1950s and 60s, leatherbacks really didn't nest here. We would get a handful every year. And then in the 90s, the population really started to increase and actually break some records starting around 2007 to 2010-ish. So they were doing really well. But we didn't know anything about them. Nobody really knew that leatherbacks existed here. And like I said, they hadn't really nested here prior to the 1950s. So the only thing that we knew about them was that they're here and that their numbers were increasing. But we didn't know how many individuals this was. We didn't know how often they were coming back to nest. We didn't know where they came from. Why did they show up on our beach? There were so many of these questions that we just didn't have the answers to. So we sat down to brainstorm how we were going to address this problem. So we sat down with a group of researchers, this was back in the year 2000, so 20 years ago, and decided that a long-term hands-on research program out on the beaches was the best way that we were going to answer all those questions and figure out what's going on with this population. So we started a tagging program. So we used basically little metal flipper tags, which are shown in the picture, and we would go out every night on the nesting beach and look for nesting leatherbacks. Every turtle that we encountered got these flipper tags. They also got a microchip, which is the same thing that you're using in your dogs and cats now for identification. And so each turtle now had a unique identifier. And we would just continue surveying the beaches back and forth. And these tags let us know how often they were coming back and what was going on with them. We also took some measurements. We took a skin biopsy for genetic analysis, and we just looked them over for injuries. So we kind of had a catalog of all the turtles that were nesting on our beaches. And after 11 years, we started in 2001, and in 2012, we looked at all the data that we'd collected over 11 years, and we had tagged a total of 466 leatherbacks. We found that their annual survival rate was pretty good. It was almost 90%, and we were averaging probably 100 females a year that were nesting in Florida. We also found that they were coming back on average every 2 to 3 years to nest, and they were laying 2 to 4 nests every season. But we wanted to know, what other techniques can we use to learn more about this population that's still kind of a mystery to us? So we started using short-term and long-term tracking data, and these are just 2 examples of turtles that were tagged from Southeast Florida and where they went in the nesting season. And just for reference, each one of these maps starts down at the bottom of the screen, where when they were tagged in May and June, goes to about August or September. So you can see they're migrating way up the east coast of the United States. And this animation I just wanted to show you is tracks of several of the turtles that we tagged several years ago. And I just wanted to give you an idea to see just how far they're going. So we often get turtles that travel up the east coast of the United States, but some of them leave our beach and head straight across the Atlantic Ocean. We do get turtles that travel as far north as Nova Scotia, which is Canada. But most of our turtles we find stay off the eastern seaboard. We get a lot of turtles that head up to Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey. So they're traveling pretty good distances. We've had one turtle that we tracked for 2 years. She went to Canada, then she went straight down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, ended up off South America, and then made that full loop again in 2 years. So they're pretty powerful animals, and they're pretty much utilizing the entire Atlantic basin for movement. We also get to look at dive behavior. So we want to know how deep these guys are diving. These turtles dive far deeper than any of the other 6 species of sea turtle because they have that soft shell that allows them to do so. And we look at genetics too. We can make a family tree, kind of like you might create for your family, and our genetic data allows us to see how closely related they are. And we were actually able to find have some mother-daughter pairs or even full sisters that are nesting on our beach, which is pretty cool. So this project was done on approximately 12 miles of beach in northern Palm Beach County, but we wanted to know what else can we do. Once we kind of had a handle on what was going on there, what else can we do? And as I mentioned, we found that they were coming back every 2 to 3 years, but occasionally we would get a turtle that we hadn't seen in 10, 12, as many as 14 years. So were they not nesting for 14 years, or were they maybe nesting elsewhere and we just didn't see them? Those are some of the questions we really wanted to answer. So like I said, clutch frequency, that means how many nests they're laying in a season, was approximately 2 based on what we were seeing. But some of these turtles we were seeing as many as 9 times in one season. So we know they're probably nesting more than we're seeing them, and we're just missing them. And that's resulting in an overestimation of the population size. And you don't want to do that with an endangered species. So what can we do to try and fix that? In Martin County, that was actually some of the densest leatherback nesting habitat, but we weren't working there. So in 2014, we decided to expand the project and start surveying up there as well. We wanted to increase our sample size, address some of those poor site fidelity issues, so that these turtles were wandering all over the place, and then get a better estimate of how well the population was doing and catch some more of these new turtles that we hadn't seen yet. So in 2013, which was the last year that we solely worked in Palm Beach County, Martin County had 352 nests, which is approximately 39% of the statewide total, but only 2.7% of the coastline. So it's a tiny little beach with a whole bunch of turtles nesting on it. So Palm Beach and Martin County combined had a total of 68% of total statewide nesting. So if we could get programs going in both of those counties, we're going to get a pretty good handle on what's going on with them. So our first year working in Martin County, we only did just a short survey. We wanted to see what the logistics were like and whether or not we'd even be able to get up there. So we surveyed a short 15 kilometers of beach on Jupiter Island and the Hobbs National Wildlife Refuge for 6 weeks. And we found 173 encounters with 101 individuals. So it was really successful, and it turned out to be a very good year. So 101 of those individuals, of those, 51 were untagged. So this was a very new beach. It was fun. It was something that we hadn't covered before. So we did start to see some untagged turtles. But 50 of the turtles that we saw were previously tagged by us on the previous study. So obviously they are wandering around, they're nesting all over the state, And so 50% of the turtles were new, which was down from about 65% on the previous site. So this was really working, and it did address some of the questions that we had relating to them wandering and their very poor site fidelity. So from there, we have continued to survey in Martin County, which has turned out to be tremendously successful for us. So between 2015 and 2020, since we started working up there, we have now expanded to 25 miles of coverage. So it's all of county line to county line in Martin County. And we have had a whopping total of 1,434 encounters with leatherbacks in those 6 seasons. So it's been really successful. That was a total of 474 individuals, and 180 of those were new, which is 38%. So we figured out that once we started tagging in both Martin and Palm Beach counties and covering more beach, we're starting to get fewer and fewer new turtles, which means our research is working and we're starting to really tag most individuals that are nesting in Florida. We've also been able to do quite a bit of satellite tagging, both short-term and long-term, in partnership with a lot of organizations. And over the 19 years that we've been doing this, we have a total of 870 leatherbacks, and we have seen them 4,616 times. And this is tremendously successful because when we started the project, state wildlife biologists thought there were probably less than 100 nesting females total in the state of Florida. So the fact that we've tagged almost 1,000 of them has been really good. Now this is a map of what our turtles are between each nest. So leatherbacks come back and nest multiple times in a season, and they're typically nesting every 9 to 11 days. These tracks show what they're doing in between those 9 to 11 days. So all of our turtles leave the nesting beach, and they typically head north to around this Cape Canaveral area, and then they slowly work their way back to their nesting beach and they nest again. So these are 4 turtles in just one set of tracks, successive nests. Oops. There we go. See if I can get this to play for you. So these are some of our long-term turtles, and they're each color coded there. These are 3 turtles that we tagged long-term. You can see the tracks down here, that's between nests. So that's just her spinning around between one nest after another. And then once they're done for the nesting season, they head north. So now all of them are tracking up the east coast of the United States, and they actually get as far north as New York, Maryland, New Jersey. So you can see they kind of cruise around there. And that's all within a period of about 1 month to 2 months. They make it up there by August, and they typically leave here in June. So they're moving really fast up the East Coast. Some of the interesting things that we have. So for the first time ever in 2014, we found a turtle nesting on our beach, which had one of those microchips, the little pit tag that I told you about, that we didn't recognize. It wasn't a format that we usually use. So we reached out to the global sea turtle community to find out if anybody knew where that turtle came from. And it turns out she was tagged in Costa Rica in 2001. So she was nesting on a Costa Rican beach and managed to find her way all the way up to Florida and nest on our beach here. Time ever documented that a turtle nested in Costa Rica and then again in Florida. And it's actually happened twice since then too. So 3 times now we found turtles that had tags that were originally put on in Costa Rica, which is really interesting. Another interesting find is we often share turtles with Canada. There is a research group up in Canada that goes out on fishing boats, and they actually use large nets to collect leatherbacks that are foraging up there. They typically go up there because there's large jellyfish populations. They bring them up on the boat, and they collect genetic samples from them, and they also put satellite transmitters on them. They have so far caught 3 of our turtles up in Canadian waters, and we've actually found a turtle that they tagged up there nesting on one of our beaches. So that's an interesting exchange as well. I wanted to tell you about this turtle. This turtle is Venus. We name all of our turtles because we have a long history with them, and it's easier for us to remember who they are if they have names. Now it's kind of a graphic image, but this is a boat strike. This is her upper shell, her top shell, and that's propeller strikes and a large cut along the middle of her shell. So this was a pretty serious injury, and she was up on our beach nesting. Now leatherback turtles don't really do well in a rehabilitation setting. Normally, if you find a sicker turtle, you can take it to a turtle hospital and they're able to fix it up. Leatherbacks just don't survive well in that setting. So we watched her nest and she returned to the water, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen, but that was a pretty significant injury. We could actually see her lungs through that cut, so we weren't sure what was going to happen. But this was taken in 2006. In 2008, one of our biologists was out on the beach and she called in with a flipper tag, and we said, there's no way that's possible. but it was Venus and the scar had completely disappeared. You could not tell that it was there. So leatherbacks have a very unique adaptation to injury. They're able to heal really well, and we don't quite understand why that is. The first time ever, it was 2 years ago, we found 11 nests laid by a single female. The most we'd ever seen before that was 9. So 11 nests every 9 to 10 days for these turtles is pretty impressive in just a 3-month window. And for the first time ever this year, we got a call from a research group over in Sanibel Captiva Island, which is on the Gulf Coast of Florida. And they had a leatherback that was nesting regularly on their beach. And they were really interested to learn more about it because leatherbacks typically don't nest on the west coast of Florida. So they gave us a call and asked if we would be interested in putting a satellite transmitter on her so that we could learn more about the behavior. And back in May, we were successfully able to attach that transmitter. And Juniper is her name, has now nested 9 times on their beach, which is the first ever documented turtle nesting that many times over there. And it's the first time ever that we have been able to attach a satellite transmitter to a turtle that's nesting on the west coast of Florida. And even more interesting, she's actually due back probably tomorrow night. So we're pretty excited to see if she nests again on their beaches. Another interesting story is Clover. She's one of our favorites. She is a turtle that we tagged way back in 2003. And when she came up to nest, she was missing one of her rear flippers from a shark bite. A shark had taken off one of her rear flippers. But like I said, these guys have a tremendous ability to heal, and she was doing just fine. And she was able to nest with just one rear flipper. Obviously, they're using those rear flippers to dig that egg chamber. She did okay. But in 2007, she came back and she had had another run-in with a shark and was missing her other rear flipper. So now Clover has no rear flippers, which means she's unable to dig. And unfortunately, if they're unable to dig, they're unable to nest successfully. But luckily for Clover, she nested pretty regularly on our beaches. And so we kind of knew when to anticipate her coming back. And our biologists were able to successfully go and dig an egg chamber for Clover. So I have a video here of Clover and kind of what we do for her, if you want. So you can see normally their rear flippers are very, very large. Hers are cut off. They're kind of stumps there due to the shark injuries she sustained. So this is her just starting to dig. And this was taken with infrared. There's no lights on the beach here. So if we don't dig for her, you can see her flippers aren't long enough to dig a hole, and she will lay her eggs on the surface of the sand and then normally ends up crushing them. So thankfully for Clover, we're able to get out there and dig for her. So this is her attempting to start digging. And then the researcher that was out with her had to put the camera down for a little bit. And then just like magic, suddenly Clover has a hole. So our research biologist is actually able to get behind her and dig her hole without her noticing. They typically don't notice when we're sitting behind them doing this. So now she has a perfectly good egg chamber in which she can deposit all of her eggs. So that's Clover. And you can see eggs in the hole. So she was able to successfully lay her eggs. I believe we've seen Clover almost 20 times now. We've been able to dig for her like this quite a few times. And like I said, they'll lay 60 to 80 eggs in each nest. So we've been able to help out a lot of Clover's hatchlings. So, and then I included this in here just to give you an idea of what we're looking for when we're out on the beach. Typically we see the track before we see the turtle. So when we're driving our ATVs up and down the beach at night, we're actually looking for this big track, which can be as wide as 6 to 7 feet. And this is a leatherback starting to lay her egg chamber. And like I said, this is all done with infrared. We don't use any lights on when we're doing this. But this is a typical leatherback. So you can see how much larger that rear flipper is than Clover's was. They're pretty massive. They're usually maybe 2 feet long and 1.5 feet wide. So they have very large rear flippers that they use to dig a hole in the sand that's about 3 feet. Once they've laid those 60 to 80 eggs in the sand, they use their rear flippers to cover it up with sand. And then once they've covered up the egg chamber itself, then they turn on the power, the front flippers. So those front flippers are 4 to 5 feet long, and they will use that to camouflage the whole area. And oftentimes they will make a giant mess of the beach, and it's very difficult for us to go out in the morning and figure out exactly where those eggs are. So it takes some practice. But at the top of this, you'll see some eggs that are much smaller than the rest of them. Leatherbacks are unique. They lay what's called spacer eggs or unyolked eggs. They're little tiny eggs. Sometimes they can be, you know, golf ball size. Sometimes they're very, very tiny. And they don't have a yolk in them, and they were never fertilized. And it's still kind of a mystery why they lay these, because the other 6 species of sea turtle don't really do that. So that's one thing that we're looking into, is why they lay these types of spacer eggs or unyolked eggs. So that's her using her powerful rear flippers to very gently cover up her eggs. And those are her massive front flippers that she's using to throw sand all over the nest. They really like to camouflage their nest so that it's very difficult to find, and they will tear up approximately 100 feet of each sometimes. They make a very big mess. It kind of looks like a tractor drove up on the beach when they're done. So really, I know that was short and sweet, and that was a little over a half hour, but I wanted to give you time for questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there. And also wanted to let you know that all of these turtles that we have transmitters on, we actually have 7 out right now. If you go to trackturtles.com, you can follow them along for the next few months while their transmitters on. So take a look at that when you get a second, or you can go to our website, which is floridaleatherbacks.com, to learn a little bit more about what we are doing. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that I can answer some of the questions in the chat. Looks like maybe there are a lot. So let me scroll up here. Okay. What turtle is the biggest? So the leatherback turtle is the biggest. They actually can reach up to 10 feet long and 2,000 pounds. So that's the biggest one on record, was almost 2,000 pounds. The females that we get nesting on our beaches are a little bit smaller. They're usually somewhere between 600 and 1,000 pounds. The next biggest turtle is going to be the green turtle, and they usually reach a full size of about 300 to 400 pounds. So that's an excellent question. Let's see what else we have here. What a track. Yeah, they have some pretty impressive tracks. It's really fun to watch them go as far north as Canada. So lots of fun. See. Are they studied in medicine for that ability to heal? That's a really good question. To my knowledge, we haven't really started getting into that too much. I know there's a lot of work done medicinally with sharks and rays in cancer research, but so far I don't know of a lot of work that's being done to understand why leatherbacks can heal as fast as they do, but it would be really impressive to try and figure out how they're able to do that. So, let's see. How fast can turtles swim? Good question. Usually they're pretty slow. We get average swim speeds of maybe 2 to 4 miles an hour, but in short bursts, they can swim 20 miles an hour or so. They just can't sustain that for very long. But like you saw from our maps, our turtles are going from Florida to Canada in a period of about 2 months. So they're actually moving pretty quick for a reptile. How fast do they lay eggs? That's a good question. Leatherbacks are usually on the beach for about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes, but most of that time is spent digging or in trying to cover up their nest. The actual egg laying process only takes about 9 to 10 minutes, so they're pretty quick. The rest of it is spent in digging the nest and then camouflaging the area. What county do leatherbacks nest the most in? Martin County in Southeast Florida is the densest of the leatherback nesting beaches, but they do nest all throughout the eastern coast of Florida. Martin County, Palm Beach County, and Indian River and St. Lucie County have probably the highest density of nesting in Florida, but Martin County is by far the highest. Do sea turtles sleep? That is a fantastic question. So the 6 species of hardshell turtle, yes, you can often find them sleeping on the bottom. They'll find a little nook to get under on the reef and they will just crash out and take a nice long hard nap there. Leatherbacks are kind of a mystery. It does not appear that they ever really stop swimming, so we don't understand their sleeping behavior. So that's something that we really need to look into. Let's see. Do sea turtles, I just lost it, there we go, struggle to walk in the sand? No, I mean, obviously it's much harder for a sea turtle to be on land than it is in water because they're obviously dealing with gravity and having to fight that. But they actually do pretty well crawling up the sand. We don't seem to see too many struggles. So yeah, they do pretty well walking in the sand. What are the markings on the stakes used to mark turtle nests? That's a really good question. And that actually depends on where you're at. So as I mentioned before, sea turtle nesting surveys are done by a wide variety of groups. There are volunteer groups, there are biologist groups, there are state parks. There's a bunch of different people that are going out there and counting those sea turtle nests every morning. And each one of them uses a unique method of marking their nests. So it kind of depends on where you're at, but usually they'll give some indication of what the species is, and then they have some kind of location reference for themselves, whether it's a beach zone or the name of a condo or something like that. So everybody uses a little bit different system. How many years can I think I missed a couple, here we go. When they travel north between 9 and 11 days, is it because they're visiting feeding grounds or for some other reason? That is a fantastic question and one that we really want to answer. So pretty much all of our leatherbacks are heading up to the Melbourne and Cape Canaveral area, and we don't know what they're doing there. It's possible that there are some foraging areas there, so maybe they're trying to find some jellyfish in between nests. We don't actually know. So I would really love to get on the water up there during nesting season and figure out why all of these females are going up to that area. How come leatherbacks nest a lot in Martin County? Good question. One thought is that that's where the Gulf Stream current is closest to shore. So they're using those current systems for moving around and migrating. And so that happens to be where the Gulf Stream is closest to the coast of Florida. So it's the shortest trip inland for them. So that's one thought as to why they're nesting most in Martin County. How many years can a sea turtle live? So we don't really know the answer to that. And that's one of the things that we're trying to answer with these long-term tagging projects. So for example, there's a leatherback research program in St. Croix, which is in the Caribbean in the Virgin Islands. They've been tagging leatherback since the 1980s, and they still have a leatherback coming back to nest that was tagged in 1984. So that's a really good indicator for us of how long these turtles can live. But it's one of the things that we're really trying to answer. The common thought is probably a 60 to 80 years or so, but we're not exactly sure on that. What is the fastest turtle on land? I honestly have no idea. Couldn't answer that one. I'm not familiar with land turtles all that well, but I know that I've seen some turtles that can move pretty quick when they're spooked. Snapping turtles are pretty quick. Soft shells are pretty quick. So I don't know what the fastest one on land is. So how can I be a part of the biologist group? That's a really good question. There are so many organizations around the world that are constantly looking for help. If you're in the position to volunteer, just reach out to any organization that's taking them. The MEEC that we work for is looking for volunteers. My nonprofit, we're always looking for volunteers. If you're looking more for a paid job, there's a lot of those out there. And if any of you are interested in getting in the marine biology field and you're still in school, the biggest thing that I can say is get some experience, do some internships, do volunteer programs, just get your hands in wherever you can. That's how I ended up in the field. I did an internship with sea turtles and I absolutely loved it. And so I've spent the last 28 years of my career doing that, and it's been a lot of fun. So reach out to any and all organizations that you have an interest in and ask if they're taking volunteers, even if it's just for, a couple of weeks or whatever you can put in your schedule. It's great to have that kind of thing on your resume. So can turtles get tired of swimming sometimes? I think they do. Our leatherbacks really never stop moving, but if you go out on the reefs off the coast of Florida here, you will often find loggerheads, green turtles, and hawksbills that are just crashed. They're taking really long naps under the reef. So yeah, they probably do get tired of swimming, but I think it's just more nature than anything. They do need to sleep, so they're finding some time to rest under those reefs when they need to. Let's see. Do turtles recognize their relatives? No, not really. Sea turtles are unique in that they're born knowing everything that they need to know to survive. So those hatchlings emerge from the sand. The female turtle never comes back to see them again. They emerge, they know everything they need to know to survive, so they really don't need to know their relatives. So, do turtles return to the beach where they hatch to nest? That's a really good question. And that's one of the things that we're starting to look at. And like I mentioned with that Costa Rican turtle, it's hard to say, but for the most part, sea turtles do return to the general area where they hatched from. It might not be the exact beach, but it might be Central Florida, it might be South Florida. So they're coming back to the same general region that they hatched from. And a lot of that is likely due to magnetic currents and things like that they're using for navigational cues. Let's see. What are current theories on leatherback females laying spacer eggs? So there's a couple, whether this is just a resource issue and they don't have the resources to provide yolk for all of those eggs, it's been tossed around. But the other thing is it could be a predator deterrent because those eggs are always laid last. So they're on the top of the nest. So if something were to dig down and get into that nest, the first thing that they're gonna see is those unyoked eggs. So then we're not causing any harm to what would have been a potential hatchling if they're digging up those unyoked eggs. So that's another theory for spacer eggs and leatherbacks. Let's see. Oh, in your research, have you seen a difference in personalities between sea turtles? 100%. They all have very unique personalities, particularly between species. Each species kind of reacts a little bit differently and acts a little bit differently. But even within a single species, when we're out on the nesting beach, we have some turtles that seem to not care that we're around. They don't even notice us. We have some that seem to be a little spunky and kind of get an attitude. So it's really kind of funny to see their unique personalities. But even in working in rehab and captive animal settings, I have seen huge personality differences in a lot of the turtles that I've worked with that are non-releasable or in a rehab setting. So very, very interesting. Is NSU a good school to become a marine biologist? Absolutely. They have a wonderful program and a lot of opportunities. So yes, I would highly recommend that. How many eggs do they lay at a time? So it depends on the species. Our leatherbacks typically lay 60 to 80 eggs, but loggerheads and green turtles that also nest here in South Florida typically lay 80 to 120. So they're laying more eggs, but they're smaller. Loggerhead and green turtle eggs are about the size of a ping pong ball, whereas leatherbacks are usually about the size of a racquetball, so a little bit bigger. Let me see, I think you guys are getting ahead of me here. Do the turtles that we adopt still go to the sea? Yes, if you are doing a turtle adoption, usually that's for a rehab turtle. So there are, honestly, I'm not sure how many facilities, but there are quite a few facilities around the state of Florida that bring in sick and injured turtles that you can adopt, and those will eventually be released to the sea. Yes. Do they navigate using Earth's magnetic field? Yes. That is the primary thought right now, is navigation is through Earth's magnetic field. One question is, why are the turtles that were tagged in Costa Rica coming up to nest in Florida now? That's something we really don't know. So seeing that wide range of nesting area has been really unique for us. Let's see. At what age do turtles become adults? So that varies by species too. Leatherbacks mature a little bit faster than the other species. So they start nesting between the ages of 12 and 18 or so. Loggerheads are typically thought to mature between 20 and 30. And green turtles can actually take a little bit longer, maybe 30 to 40 years. So it's taken them a long time to reach maturity, even more than us. Taylor, I don't know if you saw anything that I missed. What were to happen if the turtle has become egg-bound? It has happened. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it's something that we would know in particular, but it has happened before. We've had some turtles in rehab that's happened to. A lot of times we're able to do surgery for things like that. So, are they good at seeing? So underwater, sea turtles have very good vision, but actually when they're on shore, they're nearsighted. So their vision is quite poor once they're on shore. And that's probably one of the reasons that they're also very easily startled by things like lights or humans on the beach at night. So sea turtles will do what we call a false crawl, meaning they will emerge on the beach and return to the water without nesting. They actually do that about 50% of the time. It's not out of the ordinary, and it's not always caused by humans. Sometimes they just don't like the area. But yeah, they do what we call false crawl, meaning they emerge on the beach and then they return without nesting, but usually they'll come back within a few minutes and try again. Please feel free. I'm kind of scrolling down, so if I missed anything, please add another comment on the bottom. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep up with you guys, but you have a lot of good questions. What are their shells made of? Good question. So the hard shell turtles, their shells are made of keratin. So it's basically the same thing that our fingernails and our hair are made of, overlaying a thick layer of bone. So they're pretty strong. Leatherbacks are a little different. They do have bone, but it's little tiny, they're called ossicles, so bony plates that are kind of interwebbed with a layer of fat. So that's what makes them soft shelled, and that's what makes their shell able to kind of expand and contract with the pressure as they're diving deep in the ocean. What is the smallest turtle? So smallest species of sea turtle is going to be the Ridley. They usually, adult size is only about 100 pounds or so. So they're actually pretty small. And then up from there, we get the flatback, the hawksbill, and then the loggerhead, which we get here. Adult loggerheads are usually 200 to 300 pounds. Green turtles are 300 to 400 pounds. And then our leatherbacks, which get up to 2,000 pounds. As far as freshwater or aquatic turtles, I'm not sure. It might be maybe a species of mud turtle that only get about that big, but I don't know the exact answer to that one. How many bones do turtles? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. Their flippers are actually designed just like our hands are. So they have the exact same structure that we do and all the same bones that we do in our fingers and in our hands. But as far as total bones, honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. Let's see. What do they feel like? So most of them are kind of slimy because these turtles are unique in that they have a whole ecosystem on their shell. They get various things that can grow on their shell. A lot of species of algae, small crustaceans, shrimp, things like that will actually live on their shell. So usually they feel kind of slimy. Leatherbacks actually feel like rubber. They almost feel like the side of a tire. They're pretty cool. How long can they stay underwater? Good question. Our leatherbacks usually surface every 4 to 10 minutes, but they can stay under for several hours. Some of the hard shell turtles, when they're sleeping on the bottom, they can stay under for 6 to 8 hours or more. Yes, sea turtles were there when the dinosaurs were there. They have been around since the age of the dinosaurs, and they swam with the dinosaurs, so they're pretty unique in that. They've been around for over 150 million years, and that's just our modern turtles right now. When did you know you wanted to be a marine biologist, and what attracted you to the field? I love it. I don't know exactly when I decided I wanted to be a marine biologist. I loved animals as a kid. I had all kinds of animals as a kid. And I actually grew up in Michigan, so kind of a landlocked state. We didn't have oceans nearby, but I still loved the ocean. So I went to school at Michigan State University, and they had a zoology program there that I entered, and it had a marine biology minor. And even with very little experience at the ocean, I knew I wanted to work with it, and I absolutely loved it. So I guess since I was a kid, I knew I kind of wanted to work near the oceans and get into the marine biology field. It just fascinated me, especially once I got into sea turtles, because there's just so much we don't know about them. So there's a lot of questions that there were to answer, and it just really attracted me to the field. How many times does a turtle lay eggs in their lifetime? Well, that's a good question. So we don't know how long they're nesting. We know that they can lay maybe 6, 8, 10 nests in a season, and they come back every other year. But we don't know approximately how long they're nesting. They could be nesting for 30, 40, 50 years. And if you figure that's 10 nests every other year, that's quite a bit of nests throughout their lifetime. Let me see, which turtle has the strongest jaw? That's gonna be the loggerhead turtle, and aptly named. They're loggerheads because they have a very large head. These guys are feeding on crustaceans, mollusks, things like that. They're eating a lot of conch and lobster and whelk, and things with that really hard shell. So they need very powerful jaw muscles in order to be able to crush that shell. So they definitely have the strongest jaw of any of the turtles out there. Let's see. What do turtles eat? So each of the species has a different diet. Leatherbacks are feeding on jellyfish. Loggerheads are feeding on, like I said, crustaceans, mollusks, things like that. Green turtles are unique in that they're herbivores, so they're feeding on seagrass. Each species has a unique diet, and they've all adapted for that diet. They all have different jaw and skull morphology depending on what they're eating. So it just depends on what species. All right, well, I think I got your questions, but we have a couple of minutes. Can turtles swim faster than fish? They can. I think for the most part, they don't. In short spurts, they can swim pretty fast, but you're gonna see a lot faster movements out of some species of fish and sharks and things like that. Usually they're moving pretty slow.
Okay, very good questions, guys.
Yeah,
very cool. Thank
question.
you for Kelly for coming in and doing this presentation. If you think of any questions later on or we didn't address any questions, feel free to email us at meek@nova.edu. If you missed the beginning of this program, we did record it. We're going to post it to our YouTube channel. So just look up Seek the MEEC on YouTube and it will be there. All of our Zooms so far have been recorded and we're slowly but surely posting them there. So you could always catch up. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming today. We do have a program on Thursday at 1 p.m. We are doing a program with the Free RC's Youth Council. So it's actually going to be students probably around your age presenting about fast fashion and the impacts of that for conservation. It's really cool. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming, guys. Happy Sea Turtle Day. Thank you, Kelly, for presenting.
Thank you so much.
And we will see you guys soon.
Have a great day.